Yeah guys, so here we have a question on DC circuits. We basically have two batteries. They are applying a potential across this entire circuit, and we're being asked to find the potentials at specific points on this massive circuit. So we want to find the potential at this point here, and we also want to find the potential at this point over here. Now we know that for each of the resistors they have the same resistance, which is 2 ohms, and we're being told that at this point over here the potential is 0. This is where the circuit is being grounded. So as long as I'm not passing through a component in the circuit, I can assume that wherever there isn't a component on the circuit, I can say that the potential is 0. What I mean to say is, since the potential is 0 here, it'll continue to be 0 along all these points here until we reach a resistor. Once you go through the resistor, the potential here will be different. The same thing here, until we reach the resistor, the potential is still 0. So basically, along all these points highlighted in blue, the potential will remain 0. But once you go through the resistor, the potential is going to change. And why is that? Because the idea behind a resistor is that it will resist the current, it will slow down the current. The charges are flowing and the resistors are going to really try to slow it down. It's kind of like wrestling in a way, where, well, let's say two friends are playing with each other. One of them is pushing the other one, but the other friend isn't really doing anything back. So it's like the friend who's pushing you is the resistor. He's stopping you from moving, whereas you're trying to move, you're being slowed down, so you're basically the current. That's simply the idea here with the resistors. They always cause a drop in potential, whereas the batteries, they're sort of trying to push charges along the circuit. Now I need to explain what the ground really means. The theory behind the ground or the earth is that, let's say you have a metallic sphere and it has a charge of 2 plus, so 2 positive charges. If I want to make the metallic sphere neutral, I have to attach it to the earth or to the ground. And what the ground will do is it will neutralize these 2 positive charges on the metallic sphere. How does it do that? The earth or the ground will sort of send 2 negative charges, 2 electrons, to the sphere with the 2 plus charge to make it neutral. Once the sphere is neutral, there will no longer be an exchange of electrons in any direction. So if the sphere was negatively charged, then what the earth or the ground would do, if you connect the metallic sphere to the earth or the ground, it would take away electrons from the metallic sphere. In this case, you have 2 negative charges on the metallic sphere, so what that means is you take away 2 electrons. And that causes the sphere to become neutral again. So it doesn't really matter in which direction electrons flow for the ground. It just depends on what you've connected the ground to at the end of the day. If it's positively charged, then of course the earth or the ground will send electrons to the sphere, and if it's negatively charged, the earth or the ground will take away electrons from the sphere to try to make it neutral. It's just a game of trying to balance things together. So I know we went slightly off the question, but that's just the theory behind what the ground is. Now, to actually find the potentials at each of those points, what I have to do first is I have to kind of make the circuit simpler. I have to condense it down. So what I'm realizing here is that Once I go through these resistors, I start over here and I go in this way or I go this way. Once I've gone through the resistors, there is going to be a change in potential. But the change in potential after will be the same between these two resistors. So what this tells me is that these two resistors are in parallel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to condense the circuit down into, let's say, what I'll do is I'll condense these two branches down into one branch. So I'll use a different color. So whatever I have crossed out in red, you can ignore that now. And instead I'll use a different color. So the ground is here now, basically. And this resistor here is now the combination of those two resistors that were in parallel. So we have to use the parallel rule for resistance, which is going to be 1/2 plus 1/2 inverse. So 0.5 plus 0.5 is 1, and the inverse of 1 is just 1. So this new resistor we have here has a resistance of 1 ohms. So it's a 1 ohm resistor. Now what I have to kind of continue with in this question is to do a loop rule to find the actual current that's flowing through the circuit. So I'll basically do a loop rule in this direction.
Yes, I don't think so. But UCC, if like the passing,
Now I'm going to start writing that down. Just give me a second. So I'll start from here. I'm going through the negative terminal. I'm starting at the positive terminal of E1 and I'm going through the negative terminal. So I have negative 5 volts. And then I'm going through this resistor, which means, well, initially before starting the loop rule, I have to actually know the direction of the current. That's something I've forgotten here. Now look, we have one circuit, and in this one circuit we have 2 batteries. Each of them has their own voltage that they're applying across the circuit. This one has the higher voltage, and since they're in the same circuit, the 2 batteries, this one's going to be stronger. So I'm guessing, and I do believe that I'm correct as well, that the current is going to flow in this direction. It's going to flow counterclockwise. So now going back to the loop rule, I started at E1, I went through the negative terminal, that gives me negative 5 volts. Now the current is flowing from high to low potential in this direction, so I do negative IR I times R, which is 2 ohms, so I'm just going to write negative 2I. Then I'll go through this battery and it's going to give me positive 12 volts, so at the end I'm moving through a positive terminal. And then I'm moving through a 1 ohm resistor from high to low potential because I'm going along with the current. So it's IR, so negative 1 ohms, and I'm just going to put negative I instead to make it simpler. So it's negative 1 ohms times I, that's what it really is. Then I'm going through this resistor, again it's 2 ohms running from high potential to low potential. That's going to give me minus 2I, and then the same thing here, high to low, minus 2I again. Now all I need to do is kind of simplify this equation. So that's going to give me 7 volts, and then minus 7I is equal to 0, and I'll rearrange for I, and basically I get a current that is Positive 1 amperes, because when I move the 7 to the other side it becomes negative, so the negative signs cancel, and then yeah, I get a positive 1 ampere. So my guess, so the idea is you just have to guess the direction of the current according to what you think is right, and then even if it's wrong, I'll just give you a negative answer, and that doesn't matter. You can still, it depends on your teacher, you'll have to ask. You can still use that negative answer. That's what I would say. That's what my teacher taught me. So just ask your teacher about that, but it shouldn't be a big deal. You can still use the negative answer or the positive one. So I know the current now. That's awesome. Now I'm gonna erase a few things just to make things look a bit more cleaner. Now basically, just to come remind myself, in part A we're being asked to find the potential at point V1. So the blue point, so to find the potential at this point, what I'll do is I'll focus on this part of the circuit exclusively. I'll start from here and I'll go that way. I'll walk that way. So I know that because I know that at this point the potential is 0, that's why. So I'm going kind of in that direction and I'll reach here. So now as I move this way, I'm moving against the current. So I started with 0 volts and I'm moving against the current. So again, it's kind of like a loop rule again, but you're not doing the full loop. You're just doing a part of the loop. So as I move from 0 volts and I go through the resistor, basically I get positive because I'm moving against the current. I'm going from low potential to high potential this time. Final minus initial, so that's positive. Positive I times R. I is 1 amperes and times R is 1 ohm, so 1 times 1 is 1. So I have 1 volts. Positive 1 volts. Now I move through the negative, now I keep moving and I move through the negative terminal. I go from the positive terminal of E2 to the negative terminal of E2. So again, that gives me negative 12 volts. Okay, and that is equal to the potential at point V1. I stop at V1. I don't go further. So the idea with this part A was that you always want to start, you want to stand at the point where the potential is 0. You want to start at a point where you know the potential. So if the potential here was 5 volts, but they told you it was 5 volts, then you can start here. You should always start basically at a point where you know the potential and then walk from there. So now that we've kind of gone through this and we've stopped and we're now standing at V1, we get that equation. And now we're just gonna like simplify it and see what potential we actually get. So when we simplify it, it's 1 volts minus 12 volts, which gives me negative 11 volts, and that's the potential at point V1. And now let me double check. Yes, negative 11 volts is indeed the potential at point V1. So that's part A for you. Now we'll continue with part B. Hey guys, so to continue with this question, moving on to part B, and we want to find the potential at point V2 right over here. I'll increase my font a bit and I'll use a different color, so I'll use pink. So we're trying to find the potential at this point V2, and we're gonna kind of do the same thing as we did in part A. So we'll start at the point at which the grounding point, essentially, where the potential is 0, and then we're going to just like do the same thing as before. So go against the current until we reach point V2 over here. Now I'm going to kind of skip the explanation for like this part here. So I'll immediately assume that we've sort of gone through this resistor and this battery and we're already at point V1 where the potential is negative 11 volts. Now the only thing I have to go through is this resistor until I reach point V2. This resistor, as we know in this question, has a resistance of 2 ohms. And we're kind of going against the current. And the current is 1 amperes in the entire circuit. Now, as we move this way, we're going against the current, so we're going from low potential to high potential. When we do final minus initial, we will get a positive value here. So basically we're saying that V2 is equal to minus 11 volts plus 2 ohms times 1 ampere. Again, this is Ohm's law. Voltage is equal to IR. Now, resistors are supposed to cause a drop in voltage, but that's if the current is. But in this case, we're kind of going in the opposite direction to the current, and that's why the resistor would be causing an increase in voltage. So when we simplify this, we get minus 11 volts, and when we do amperes times ohms, we get volts. And we have plus 2 volts, so V2 now is equal to minus 9 volts. And let me double check that. Yes, the answer is minus 9 volts, and that's pretty much it with this question. So the idea is just to kind of like, if the circuit is a bit big and complicated, maybe condense it down, make the branches shorter, combine what you can, right, using the equivalent resistance formula into one resistor, things like that. And then, they've given you information that, at this point the voltage is 0, so maybe start here and then sort of like do a loop rule, but not necessarily a full loop. Just go with a loop until you get to a specific point in the circuit where where you need to find the voltage. And just keep in mind the general direction of the current, where it's flowing, so draw that out. Find the value of the current itself in the circuit throughout the entire circuit, and that's pretty much it. So after finding the value of the current throughout the entire circuit and knowing where it's going, where it's flowing, drawing that out and condensing the circuit down a bit, simplifying it as much as we can using the equivalent resistance formula, we can sort of make this problem simpler and then find the potential at various points. I hope this helps, and have a good day.